Hey everybody, Marcus here. It is time for the return trip of the coast to coast Cybertruck trek across America. We are going from Delaware to California. Now, if you watched my previous video, we took the 80 route out here to go west to east. Going east to west to get a little bit different scenery, I wanted to do I-70. In the beginning here, we'll probably go through maybe Maryland and West Virginia and then hook up with 70 around the end of Pennsylvania or Ohio. Otherwise, we might take 76 in Pennsylvania for a little bit and then get on 70. So looking at the trip coming up, I think the first day I'm going to aim to get to somewhere in Illinois. It's about 750, 800 miles. I'm aiming, I think, for Vandalia, Illinois. There's also a stop a little bit shorter there, looking like about 14 hours or so with charging included, about 805 miles. Let me show you here. So to get to Vandalia from here in Delaware, we're gonna do a deep charge here. I'm at 61%. I'll be leaving early in the morning and not going to be charging at my parents' house when I leave. So probably going to do close to 100% charge here and then get everything packed up and then leave hopefully around 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Stop-wise here, you can see the trip planner showing 14 hours, 14 minutes, 6 stops, 805 miles. Now I did check that with the trip planner on a better route planner, and that's recommending like 4 stops, especially if we leave with 100%. I think this might be a little bit off because of the 62% we have right now, and that's why it's showing so many more charging stops. But yeah, I'm thinking basically we can get close to here in Vandalia. There's also a stop in Effingham there. So that wouldn't be a bad option if it starts to get too late. But we're gonna get charged up here to 100%, and then I'll show you some of the packing before we head out here. Alrighty. Alright, so it's about 7 a.m. Truck is all packed up. Got a bit more stuff than last time. We're taking some stuff home from Delaware here, but bed is all packed up and good to go. The tonneau cover here comes down. Perfect. In here, going to be a little bit different. We've got the seat up and a picture that we got in Budapest that we're bringing back, big frame picture. So that's all wrapped up and safe. And here's the front, just the usual drinks and all that, and some food and other random stuff here. So let's hit the road. All right, it's Tuesday morning here. We are headed out. I got my favorite breakfast from in town, Bagel Mania, you rock. Bacon, egg, and cheese on an everything bagel. We're gonna head out to Western Maryland on this stop. A better route planner with 100% charge was saying that we would get to Morgantown, West Virginia, but looking at the Tesla trip planner here, it's saying we get there with negative 18%. So we're gonna stop somewhere in Western Maryland. It was suggesting Cumberland, Maryland, but that was a 4-stall 250 kilowatt charger. So we might go a little bit farther than that. There's one that's an 8-stall in Laval, Maryland. Looks like not much to choose from in Western Maryland, but we'll go ahead and do that and then change our plan from there. We were going to stop in Morgantown, but not sure if that'll be necessary. So let's hit the road. So we made it to LaVale, Maryland. It was a pretty uneventful drive out here, about 200 miles. I'll show you the stats here. That was 197.4 miles, 81.6 kilowatt hours used, 413 watt hours per mile. Not too bad. Now, originally I was trying to get to Morgantown, West Virginia on the first stop, but I charged to 100 and the battery drained down to about 90% before I left. So I tried recalculating while we were doing it, but we would have ended up about 6 or 7% short. So I thought this was a V3, but I'm seeing the metal handles on the supercharger cable, so it looks like a V2. So just gonna plug in here real quick, use the restroom, and then see where we need to go from here. Might try recalculating and seeing if we can maybe stop, skip the stop in Morgantown, go a little bit further, but we'll see here in a sec. All right, so we're sitting here at the sheets. I looked at the trip plan basically and what the car wanted to do versus a better route planner. Kind of interesting. I didn't catch that this was a V2 and I was planning it. Basically, it wanted us to stop in Cumberland, which was a 4-stall V3, 250 kilowatt capable, but 4 stalls just seemed a little dicey, even though I am the only person at the supercharger right now. But basically, the car is going to have us stay here probably about 20-25 minutes to get to from LaVale to Triadelphia in West Virginia, instead of doing the Morgantown one right there. So this here is a 8-stall 250 kilowatt capable station. Looks like there's actually an old 150 that's in there too. But we'll stop and do this basically, and it looks like from here on out until we stop tonight, these should all be V3 250 kilowatt capable. So if we had stopped in Cumberland, we would have been at about 25%, so we wouldn't have seen a huge advantage going on the V3 there, and I just thought it might be a little dicey with only 4 stalls. So we're just going to stay here for about 15 more minutes and then head on out to Triadelphia. Actually, probably going to charge a little bit longer here. It looks like we're going to hit rain. I've never really had to use the weather radar living in California too much, but looks like we got a good pocket of rain coming through here that I'll probably be in for the next couple hours. So we'll keep it going. We're still 148 and should hold that pretty deep into the pack, like 60-70% on these V2s. So probably charge a little bit extra just because we won't get as good efficiency in the rain, but thankful to have the radar to tell me to charge more. made it to another Sheetz in Triadelphia. Not much to see there, over there. It was 125.7 miles, 53.2 kilowatt hours, 422.9 watt hours per mile. Got here with 19%. So yet again, I did not trust the trip planner, and it seems to have been pretty much right. We were projected when I left, I think, to 17%, and got here with 19%. So it's right again. Probably should just start listening to it, but we're gonna get plugged in and see where we got to go to next. I think it's Columbus, Ohio. 23 minutes here, Columbus, Ohio. So not too bad. Let's get plugged in. All right, so we drove through some pretty heavy rain there. I was expecting there to be moisture in the bed. Not too bad. Got just a couple drops there. A little bit in the corner there. Can't see within the bed to see if there's more, but time to make a roadie sandwich, and we got about 15 minutes here to go, and on to Columbus. All right, we're about 320 miles into the day of driving here. Just as I finished my sandwich, the charging session finished up here, so we're gonna head out. Looks like we've got a little bit of rain left, so we'll deal with that, and hopefully that should be the end of the weather, at least for today, hopefully for the rest of the trip. So we'll just keep an eye out on that one for the future days here. But we're at 68% here in roughly 25 minutes, getting here at about 19%. So quick charge stop, just enough time to eat a sandwich and go and use the restroom, and back on the road. Just made it into Columbus, Ohio. Looks like we are finally through the rain. It's finally sunny again. There are some aggressive drivers in Ohio that I guess don't like the Cybertruck. That was kind of interesting to see, trying to wave me forward to do or say something. I don't know. I'm in full self-driving. I don't care. I'm just driving along, so you're not gonna get me road raging. Sorry, bud. Anyways, let's look at the stats here. This leg got here with 20%, predicted to have 15%, I think, so more efficient than normal, or than expected. 143.5 miles, 56.3 kilowatt hours, 392.1 watt hours per mile. Almost at the rated range there. So we've got 11 minutes here in Columbus. It's at like a Walmart, probably can't see it, shopping center type thing with a Walmart. 11 minutes here, probably just gonna run in and use the restroom, and then on to Richmond, Ohio. Let's get plugged in. Turns out it was a Meijer instead of a Walmart. That place is huge. It looked like there was like a whole Walmart and then a grocery store on top of it. But anyways, that was a gigantic store. We're headed to Richmond, Indiana next, 97 miles, so a short stop here. Just basically had enough time to go in, go to the bathroom, come back, and then I started driving about 10 hours ago, and one thing with the outlets is they have a 12-hour timer on them. So basically just had to reset the timer here so I don't forget, and the food and everything stays cold. Probably would have gotten to the next stop before the cooler shut off, but figured I'd just do it ahead of time. But we are charged up and ready to go, saying 12% arrival in Richmond, 97 miles, hour and 28 minutes. So let's do this. Alrighty, we made it to Richmond, Indiana. Got here with 19%. Again, much more efficient. We did 96.1 miles, 39.1 kilowatt hours, 407.2 watt hours per mile. That was a shorter leg. Looks like we have 20 minutes to get to Terre Haute, Indiana. That's a 24 stall V3, one of the biggest I've seen, outside of the West Coast here. So that next leg will definitely be a longer leg, 140 miles. So let's get plugged in and charging. With our second to last charging stop of the day, just wanted to look at the day's stats so far. We've done 560.4 miles, 229.2 kilowatt hours, and we're averaging 409 watt hours per mile. And that's even with a bit of rain for the end of Pennsylvania and Ohio. I'm really impressed with the road trip experience with the Cybertruck yet again. We're looking right now, I'm just doing what the Tesla trip planner says. Basically just doing some shorter stops to 50-60% and moving on. 70 seems to have a ton of charging. Maybe that'll thin out as we get more west, but it's the land of Meijers and Sheetz so far in terms of charging stops, but they've been good. Meijer has the bathrooms right in the front, which is nice. Sheetz is not as good as Wawa for a convenience store, but they're pretty awesome, clean bathrooms and everything. But yeah, Cybertruck has been a awesome road tripper so far, so I'm just going to charge here for 2 more minutes and then head to Terre Haute at 8:12. That'll still be in Indiana, but I think after that charging stop, once we get into Illinois, we get an hour back. Hoping to get to the hotel tonight about 9:30ish or so. We'll see. I'm not going to do the cyber camping probably this trip back, just because I have so much stuff in the back of the car and I don't really want to basically have to work around getting it out. It's all underneath for the most part, but I just want to make it easy to get in and get out in the morning. I may try and do this trip in 3 days instead of doing 3.5 like I did on the way out here, but we'll see later into tomorrow and Thursday. So, alrighty, let's get unplugged here in a minute and head to Terre Haute. Okay, we're at another Meijer in Terre Haute, Indiana. Got here with 14%, which I think is just a couple percent more than it predicted. This drive, 139.3 miles, 56.9 kilowatt hours, 408.6 watt hours per mile. Pretty much identical to the rest of the trip so far. Just a hair shy of 700 miles on the day. Gonna do a 13-minute charge here in Terre Haute to get to Vandalia, where I plan on getting a hotel for the night. It's like 9:39 arrival. This is a humongous charging station for compared to everything else. It's been like 8 stalls or 12 stalls the whole rest of the time. Here with 24, I believe it said. So let's get plugged in and charging, and gonna try and find a hotel for the night. Okay, we made it to Vandalia, Illinois. Got Burger King, Phillips Route 66. Got here with 19%. Overcharged a little bit getting the hotel room at the last stop. For this leg, 104.4 miles, 43.1 kilowatt hours, and 413.4 watt hours per mile. For the day, because I am headed to the hotel about a mile away after this, 804.2 miles, 329.3 kilowatt hours, and 409.5 watt hours per mile. Probably going to charge up to 80% or so here. It's 9 p.m. now, so don't think, basically with all the charging options that there have been on 70, that I need to do 100% here, and I don't really feel like sitting there that long, so let's get plugged in and get to 80%. Good morning. It's the second day of our trip across the country here. We are in Vandalia, Illinois right now. I think today I'd like to head to Lemon, Colorado, which is about 835 miles or so, about the same distance as yesterday. So we are leaving the hotel here with a 74% charge. Let me show you the plan for today. So looks like the trip planner wanted us to stop a little bit closer to St. Louis, but I think we can stretch it to Columbia. There are plenty of bailouts either in St. Louis or a little past that we can just charge up for 5 minutes if we have to get farther. So we're going to try and stretch it to Columbia, showing the stable at 71 miles an hour message, but hopefully that will improve. Also looks like we have a software update, 20.6. We'll see if we can get onto Wi-Fi at one of the superchargers and get that downloaded and maybe installed tonight. So let's hit the road. We got 836 miles of driving to do today. Let's do this. Made it to Columbia, Missouri. Finally, something other than a Myers. This is like a 12-stall V3. Empty here. Got it to myself. Once again, I feel like we need to trust the Tesla trip planner because predicted 5, got here with 7. No need to bail. We did 185.9 miles, 76.3 kilowatt hours, and 410.3 watt hours per mile. Almost at 1,000 miles for the trip so far. We've got 31 minutes to plug in and off to Lawrence, Kansas, it's looking like, which is 155 miles away. Let's get charging. Alright, so just finishing up a relatively deep charge here in Columbia, Missouri. Looking ahead, looks like next stop will be Lawrence, Kansas, a V3 with 12 stalls just past Kansas City. And I was looking at the rest of the day. For some reason, the trip planner wants us to go to Salina, Kansas, which is a 150 kilowatt charger. It's also the only charger I've ever been stranded at. When I took this trip in the Model 3 6 years ago, there was a big storm and a lightning strike took out the supercharging station. So I want to avoid the V2s if possible, and it looks like in Abilene a little bit before that there's a V3. So I'm assuming we'll just have a little bit shorter charge in Lawrence there. So let's hit the road. We've got 155 miles here to get to Lawrence, Kansas. Made it to Lawrence, Kansas with 16%. I changed the routing because it was taking us to Salinas, and I want to go to Abilene. Looks like a 17 or 21 minute charge there, or here, I should say. Anyways, 154.2 miles, 70.2 kilowatt hours, 455.2 watt hours per mile. Let's get plugged in, and it looks like it is a country mile to get to a restroom, so let's get charging. Alright, so we've charged about 20 minutes here in Lawrence, Kansas. We are headed to Abilene next. What's kind of interesting here is that we've charged to a buffer of 13% now. Walking back from the bathroom, it did feel like we had a slight headwind, and in Kansas, or at least on 70 here, speed limits are 75, so we're pretty much just keeping it at 80 the whole entire time. So it seems like the car itself is adding a little extra buffer to account for the wind and maybe the speed. Pretty cool to see that. So let's head to Abilene. This is going to be 117 miles, hour and 49 minutes. made it to Abilene with 15%. Did 116.5 miles, 59.9 kilowatt hours, 514.2 watt hours per mile. We kept it at 80 miles an hour the whole entire time and had that headwind. So it's like next one up is Russell, Kansas. We got 15 minutes to charge here, so let's get plugged in and going. So we are finishing up our charge here in Abilene, 3 minutes to go. Driving through Kansas is like driving through the Windows XP background of those green rolling hills. It's just a beautiful state, and with the 75 mile an hour speed limits, we're doing 80 the whole way, and it's just been a breeze. The roads are real nice too. I've been enjoying Kansas, so hopefully that continues here. One thing that I wanted to bring up that was brought up from my previous video was, what are my charging costs? The last trip I did West Coast to East Coast, we used about 1,225 kilowatt hours of during the trip, roughly that of supercharging also. Now, one of the benefits with the Foundation series is that all my supercharging is free for life with this truck, so it's actually costing me nothing so far, or nothing at all, I should say. I doubt I would get a congestion fee at some point, needing to charge over to 80%, because that's just, shouldn't really have to do any deep charges like that with all the chargers along the routes here. But essentially, yeah, other than tolls, which were a lot in Pennsylvania, mainly Ohio and Illinois, I want to say, and there are a couple in Kansas here, the driving is free. So just wanted to clear that up. Let's head out from Abilene here to Russell, Kansas. Short hop, 90 miles, hour 16 minutes. See you there. To Russell, Kansas. Got a Sonic here. Kind of cool. You can order to have it delivered to your supercharging spot, which is nice. Got here with 9%. Did 89.7 miles, 52.9 kilowatt hours, and 589.7 watt hours per mile. I can feel the wind shaking the car right now. It's definitely picked up, and we were, at 80, 82 the whole time, so definitely why our consumption is way up from normal. Looks like we got a 25-minute stop here to get to Oakley, Kansas, so let's get charging. So it seems to be the norm when it's above 90 degrees out that we're going to get derated charging sessions on V3s. Plugged in here, briefly got above 200 and then dipped down into the 160s, 170s. Stayed there for a little bit and basically went up a little bit and then just stayed kind of derated. So unfortunately with this heat, we're seeing a lot of derated charging sessions again, but not much we can do about it. We are charged up enough to go, but I'm just going to add a little buffer because the wind was a lot on that last leg. Got 109 miles to go to get to Oakley, Kansas. Let's do it. Ashley, Kansas with 14%. Nice place, another Sonic dog park right there. We got here after 107.9 miles, 63.4 kilowatt hours, 587.8 watt hours per mile, and pretty much hit the halfway point of the trip. 1,460 miles so far, about 660 miles a day, 447.2 watt hours per mile. We've got a just quick top off here, 7 minutes to get to Goodland, Kansas, which is only 59 miles away. Kind of interesting, we're doing a top up instead of just a deep charge to get to Lyman, Colorado, which I'm aiming to be our end point for the day, but I'm guessing it's faster to just top off here than do a really deep charge. So let's get plugged in. My big gripes here are these center mounted dispensers here. With the Cybertruck, you really have to bias yourself off to the side, almost getting into the other charging spot, unfortunately. Thankfully, we have the place to ourselves, but I wish they would offset them more like these are. But for the one I picked the wrong one. Oh well. Looks like we are charging. Gonna go run in, use the restroom. Let's do a bug update. Getting pretty buggy. Alright. Alright, so after a short hop, skip, and jump, we are in Goodland, Kansas. 58.6 miles, 31.6 kilowatt hours, 539.6 watt hours per mile. As you saw, hit 10,000 miles during that, and also 1,500 miles on the trip so far. Got here with 24%. This is a V2 stall, so let's get plugged in. So since this is a V2, we've got to do the urinal technique, if you're not familiar with, since these V2 cabinets split power, essentially, they're paired. So usually it's like 1A, 1B, you know, but this one it looks like it's 1A, 2A, 3A, and then 1B, 2B, 3B as you go down the line there. So this one's kind of interesting. Usually you'd use the urinal technique where you just do every other one. You don't want to go to the one right next to the one because it'd be awkward. But in this case, basically, we don't want somebody to plug into 2B while we're here because we're getting the full 143 kilowatts. If they were to plug in, we'd both go to 72 kilowatts, and that's just slow. So hopefully nobody comes soon, and if they do, I'm just going to try to steer them away from the 2B because I am at 2A. We do have kind of a gang of people that seems to be coming or traveling along the same route, so it's like a Model 3 is pulling up now, maybe? So we'll see. Hopefully we can avoid getting a slower rate just because there's nobody else here, but there is that Model 3 off in the distance there, so let's see how this goes. Now, thankfully, he plugged into, I think 3B, but we have a Model Y pulling up here, so we're gonna have to make sure he doesn't plug into B. I think he's gonna pull into A to do the every other one, which is the move. Now we've just got to hope there's not more people coming in, because then we're going to get slower rates, but still holding at 144 kilowatts here. 15 minutes and then we're on to Lehman, Colorado. Time to book a hotel. Well, we dodged a bullet there. Nobody else came, so we are ready to go. Headed to Limon. Gonna do a somewhat, probably a deeper charge there. I forgot that we were getting an hour back, I think, when we get into Colorado, so I'll get there at 6:20. So I may do a pretty hefty deep charge there, and then basically try and get out in the morning. I was planning, I probably could have driven another couple hours today. It's already about 830 miles today after I get there, but I wanted to do the Rockies in the daylight because it's just a beautiful drive. So yeah, let's head to Limon. All right. So we made it to Limon, however you say it, Colorado. 106.8 miles, 55.7 kilowatt hours, 522.1 watt hours per mile. And since this is the end of the day, we did about 820 miles, 740.3 kilowatt hours total, on a trip average of 455.6 watt hours per mile. Now this is kind of an interesting supercharger station, because I was going to plug in over here so the sun wasn't in my eyes, but I noticed the metal bands. Those are V2s, 6 of them it looks like. And then on this side we have V3s. So split station here, but we're gonna obviously pull in or use the V3s, as those will be faster. I'm gonna plug in here and then take a look at what our plans should be for tomorrow. Well, that didn't go well. 5A has a bent pin. Gotta move stalls. All right, so came up with a plan for tomorrow morning. We are going to head to Gypsum, Colorado. Actually took a look at the... This guy's pulling into the V2 instead of the V3. We're going to head to Gypsum. I looked, and there are quite a few V4 325 kilowatt capable stations in the area, in that mountain range kind of. If we can't make it to Gypsum, we can always bail and go to Frisco, which is a little bit earlier and also 325 kilowatt. So basically, this is 220 miles in the morning. I am doing a full charge here. I'm just going to go to 100%. figure leaving the cooler on and the truck on overnight, we'll probably lose about 10% and should be able to basically get there according to a better route planner with 75, using 75% of the battery. So looks like right now it's saying with 85%, we'd have 2% when we get there, 83% of the battery. So we'll play it by ear in the morning, but gonna do that and then head through the Rockies there. So let's finish up charging, and then I'm gonna head to the hotel for the night and try and do an early morning departure so we could get as many miles in as possible. I'm hoping I don't think it's really possible, but I would like to maybe try and do this in 3 days if I can squeeze it in and leave early enough tomorrow, but we'll just kind of see what happens as the day goes on. So gonna finish up charging and then head to the hotel. Alright, so I forgot to take a video at the hotel, but we are headed out from the hotel in Limon, headed to Gypsum. It's about 215 miles away. The battery went down to 94% overnight, so leaving with as full of a battery as we can. We started out with a 6% predicted arrival. It's down to 4% right now, so hopefully that will hold. If not, there are plenty of bail options before we get to Gypsum. Hoping to get to one of the V4 325 kilowatt chargers, at a very low state of charge, so we can take advantage of that 325 kilowatt charging. So enjoy the Colorado sunrise here. Absolutely beautiful out here. And we'll see you when we get there. Alright, so we're in Silverthorne, Colorado here. Actually needed to take a bathroom break, and these are some V2 stalls here. We don't need to charge per se. We still are actually going to get to gypsum with 18%, so I'm just going to plug in here while I go to the bathroom and then reevaluate, because I think we can go quite a bit farther than gypsum. I'm just gonna take advantage of the chargers here. Not that we need them, but nice to plug in and get a little bit extra. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I checked out the trip plan after getting back from the bathroom here, and basically we don't need to stop in gypsum. The next up that makes sense is Parachute, Colorado, which is a V3, I believe. Yeah, 12 stall V3. We probably could stretch it to Grand Junction, but that is a 120 kilowatt, like unupgraded V2 station, so there's no way I'm stopping at that. So I've added probably about a quarter of the battery here in Silverthorne, just, stuck at the 145 kilowatt that V2s do, and the battery is starting to ramp down now. It says we'll get to Parachute with 23%, so plenty of battery. So let's head out and head to Parachute. made it to Parachute, Colorado at a Sinclair gas station. Made it here with 26%, a little bit more than it predicted. It was 121.2 miles, 36.5 kilowatt hours, 301.4. Actually, it's 130.9, 43 kilowatt hours, and 328.2. Stopped to take some glamour shots of the truck in the Rockies, so that was a little bit of a delay. Wow, we've got a deep charge here. 43 minutes, 199 miles to Wellington, Utah. So let's go ahead and get plugged in. Before I plug in, I just want to say that drive from Denver west on 70 is that's a bucket list drive. I mean, I turned off FSD and drove myself, and it was just an absolute blast. Up through the mountains and then down through that Glenwood Canyon. It was just beautiful the whole entire time. Just an absolute bucket list drive. So you should definitely go and try and drive that at some point in your life, because it's just a blast. So I was looking to see if there was a way to avoid basically doing like a 90% deep charge here in Parachute. And I looked at the route. We're towards the tail end of 70, about to get back onto 80, but it looks like about the only charger in between here and Wellington is in Green River, and that's a 150 kilowatt station, so potentially shared, and I think only 8 stalls, so I don't want to risk it doing that. So we're just going to stay here and do the deep charge to get to Wellington, so hopefully not too much longer here. we are in Wellington, Utah. I got here with 9%. It was a little dicey there because the car, about 20 miles into the drive, rerouted us to Green River. And I really didn't want to do that because it was showing 3 available upon arrival, so it was pretty much guaranteed paired charging, which I didn't want to do. So I removed it from it, and it said 8% arrival in Wellington, and that went down to 6% during the drive. I cut 5 miles an hour. Instead of doing 80, I did 75. Because we had a bunch of weather alerts showing up on the phone. And so I wanted to make sure I had enough just in case we hit heavy rain, but the rain never really came. So everything worked out well. Here we are for the trip, 197.4 miles, 93.7 kilowatt hours, 474.5 watt hours per mile, and crossed over 2,000 miles for the trip, almost at a megawatt hour of energy. So we've got a 13-minute charge here to get to South Salt Lake City. Let's get plugged in. We made it to Salt Lake City on like the back of a Winco Foods, but a huge supercharger here. Got here with 29%, 123.1 miles, 38.6 kilowatt hours, 314 watt hours per mile. Hit a bit of traffic on the I-15 between Provo and Salt Lake City here. Looks like we're headed to Wells, Nevada. Pretty big stop here. 30 minutes to get there. 179 miles. So let's get plugged in. Now I know I just said that driving through the Rockies on 70 west of Denver was a bucket list, but I'm having a hard time deciding whether Utah or Colorado is more beautiful. It's been a great day of driving, just absolutely beautiful scenery to watch, as we drive through, and they're just two awesome states, and drive through them if you can. Don't get on the airplane, get in the car and drive. It's really a great way to see the country. So yeah, I can't decide. I think Utah, but I'm not sure. They're both so good. Well, we didn't make it to Wells, Nevada. Doing 85, the buffer that I had just went away very quickly. So we're having to stop in West Wendover. But as you see here, it's a full V2 station with 6 stalls, and there's 3 people in front of me waiting to charge. So we're gonna be here for a while. I shot myself in the foot on this one, but oh well. We'll get a quick top up here after we wait and head on to Wells. Lesson learned, probably should have just slowed down to 75 or 80 and gotten there with next to nothing instead of doing 85 the whole way, but oh well. Well, we are finally plugged in and charging. 57 kilowatts, just shamefully slow because of the paired charging here, the V2. I looked, it was 38 minutes to wait. That's ridiculous. It said 20 minutes on the trip planner when I got here. And a first, I've not seen this before, is the congestion fees beyond 80%. The first 3 cars in front of me moved pretty quickly, and then I just sat there for a half an hour. So Don't know if people were full charging or what was happening, but oh well, we're plugged in. 10 minutes or so to get to Wells, Nevada. Since our last charge, we did 123.2 miles, 63.2 kilowatt hours, and 513.2 watt hours per mile. Lesson learned. Next time, just going to slow it down. Tesla, please update old V2 stalls. Now, if there's one saving grace to the situation, it's that the car next to me just left and there's no line anymore. So I'm actually getting 104 kilowatts now. Still says limited by charging station, so I'm assuming because the whole site is relatively full, but alrighty, 5 minutes to go. Made the short hop to Wells, Nevada, back at this place that we were at on the way east. 57.6 miles, 31.8 kilowatt hours, 552.7 watt hours per mile. We've got a 9-minute charge. That doesn't make sense. I'm gonna go to Battle Mountain. Got a 23-minute charge to get to Battle Mountain, where I have a hotel for the night. So 120 miles. Let's get plugged in. Well, this is interesting. I got a notification the charge cable, or the charging had stopped, and I came over here and it says charging equipment not ready, and it is stuck in here. So I'm gonna have to manually release the charge port, I guess. That thing is not charging and will not come out. Okay, so I was able to get the charging cable out here. What you have to do to get the manual release is actually pop off this cover here, and then you have the pull strap here. So I already pulled it and released it. What's interesting is this gentleman right here also had his stop. So something must have happened, but I'm gonna move over to the other side and we'll see if we can continue charging here. All right, so plugged in at a different cabinet and we are doing fine again. Not sure what the issue was there. The fun part is pulling that release, so I can't get that to sit back in right. I don't know if I broke a clip pulling it off. It took a tremendous amount of force to get that off, so might just have to take a look at that at home, or put that in for a service ticket too, but we'll see. All right, so that was stressful. I can't get the cover on the back that I had to pop off to go back on. think I might have broke it pulling it off. It was extremely hard to pull off, so definitely just put in a service ticket for that. Hopefully that can get replaced, but looks like we are charged up enough to head to Battle Mountain, an hour and 39 minutes away, 120 miles. I'm ready for bed. It was a little bit of stress there between the waiting at the last stop and then having the error here. So usually Tesla supercharging very smooth, but the past two have not been. Let's hope that improves. So off to the hotel, or the supercharger, then the hotel in Battle Mountain. We made it to Battle Mountain. Closed food store, closed hardware store. Got here with 25%, 118.7 miles, 55.4 kilowatt hours, 466.9 watt hours per mile. Turned over 2,500 miles on the trip. Going to the hotel from here, so just gonna do like a 80% charge. Gonna look at the plan and see what it says to do for tomorrow. I assume we probably just need enough to get to a V3 in the morning, so hopefully not too much of a deep charge here. So let's get plugged in. Man, I really do not like driving at night in the first place, and with the waiting at the V2 stall in Wendover, and then basically having that charging issue that took another 10 minutes or so. I ended up driving till about 9:30 tonight. It started raining off and on. You might even see in the video there was some lightning off in the distance, and so that just made it not fun. FSD refused to go the speed limit at some point, so I had to do some manual driving. I am just going to be happy to lay down in the bed in the hotel and get a nice night's rest. We're 2,500 miles in, about 300 to 400 to go. So a short day tomorrow, probably only 1 or 2 charging stops. Just gonna charge to 80% here. So nothing too long, thankfully. What I did forget to say in the excitement of the charging mishap before was that when I pulled up at the supercharger station, I saw that Model 3 there that looked really familiar, and went out and talked to the guy, and it was actually Tim Hoyer. His X handle is @TeslaTim2. He makes the desk chairs out of Model 3, Model Y, Cybertruck, X, and S seats. And I've had my eye on a white one, so he said those are in demand the most, so hoping that maybe works out in the future. But if you haven't, check him out. Follow him on X or his YouTube also. But nice to run into somebody in the community at a charging stop pretty much in the middle of nowhere, and thought that was kind of fun. So I'm gonna finish charging up here, and we'll see you in the morning. So I woke up with the same notification we had in Rock Springs: outlets unavailable, unplug any devices and reset outlets to restore. I did get it on my phone overnight at about 2 a.m. so let's check it out. Now, it did rain overnight, so I'm wondering, there's some water there. Oh, I have a feeling that's probably the culprit. Okay, so it seems like water got in the bed, dripped down on those outlets, and shut it off. Interesting. Okay, it is day 4 of the road trip. We just have a short day today, about 360 miles to make it home. So first stop's going to be in Fernley, Nevada. It wanted me to stop in Lovelock and then Verity, Nevada. Lovelock is a 150 kilowatt. I don't want to do that. So hoping to make it to Fernley. It says with 4%. We'll play that one by ear. It's 183 miles. We have 85% here. So I think we can make that pretty easily. Just not going to do 85. And then after that, we should be able to get home off of that charger to the supercharger in town. So let's hit the road this morning. to Fernley, Nevada. Got here with 4%. Kind of had to feather it in at the end there. We were doing 80 to 82 the whole way. And once we started headed south, there was a wind coming from the south and just started to kill our buffer. We were at like 6% the whole way. It went down to 2%. So had to knock it down to 75 to get here. Just because we were eating into our buffer a little bit too much for comfort. So we're at 181.3 miles for that leg, 93.3 kilowatt hours, and 514.3 watt hours per mile. Now this should be the last stop before we head home here. So saying 184 miles, got to do a relatively deep charge here. So get plugged in and head over to the McDonald's and hope the bathroom code is still 0326 from last week. All right. So one downside of getting here with 4% is I just noticed the fridge is off and no air is there, but I went to turn it on in the app and you have to have 5% charge to run the fridge. So we got here with 4. We'll add that 1% here in probably 15 seconds, so we'll get it turned back on in a sec, but just an interesting tidbit with the fridge. Well, great success. Bathroom code at McDonald's is still 0326. Out of spite, I will not buy anything there because paying for the bathroom is stupid. I don't like that policy. So we are in Fernley, Nevada here. Can't believe it's the last supercharging session of the road trip. We're almost 5,500, 5,600 miles into it and almost done. Bug update. The rain washed quite a bit off. Still pretty messy. Definitely gonna need a bath when we get home and clean all the grime off. Hard to believe it. The coast to coast to coast road trip is over. I'm at our local supercharger here, gonna charge up just so we have charge to get around town for the next week or so, but let's take a look at the stats. For that last drive, we did 178.8 miles, 67.9 kilowatt hours, and 380 watt hours per mile. For the west or east coast to west coast total trip, 2,890 miles, 1,297 kilowatt hours, 448.9 watt hours per mile on average. Now I'm gonna head home after this and get the truck all washed up and cleaned out and, get everything unpacked from it. But I'm gonna add a little video here going over all the stats of not only the East Coast to West Coast portion, but the whole entire coast to coast trip. All right, it's 2 days later after I've gotten back from the coast to coast to coast trip. I have the statistics for you. For the West Coast to East Coast leg, California to Delaware, we drove on I-80. It was a total of 41 hours of driving, 2,800 miles, and we used 1,226 kilowatt hours to drive those 2,800 miles. Charging-wise, we inputted 1,376 kilowatt hours from the superchargers. That was over a 10-hour span for the entire trip, and that was 17 total charge sessions. Now, East Coast to West Coast, we did 42 hours of driving, a little bit longer route using I-70 and then coming up to 80. That was 2,900 miles total, and we used 1,304 kilowatt hours to drive those 2,900 miles. Charging-wise, on the East to West Coast leg was 1,442 kilowatt hours from those chargers, a total time spent charging of 10.5 hours and 22 total charge sessions. Now, in total for the trip, that's 5,700 miles to go. California to Delaware to California. That was 83 total hours of driving with 20.5 hours of charging. So roughly 20% of the time you're spending, electric road tripping, you're going to be charging. And that was a total of 2,530 kilowatt hours used to drive those 5,700 miles. Now, like I said earlier in the video, we have a Foundation Series Cybertruck. So that, 2,530 kilowatt hours used was all free. We didn't have to pay for that at all. We only had that one session in West Wendover where there potentially would have been congestion charges, but we weren't charging anywhere near 80%. So our entire trip, charging-wise, completely free. Now, at our home rates for superchargers, 2,500 kilowatt hours would be roughly 50 cents per kilowatt hour. So you're looking at a total savings on that trip if we use the home rate of about $1,250. Assuming that the charging is probably cheaper across the country, instead of using California rates, I'd wager that we saved about $1,000 not paying for supercharging with that Foundation Series perk. So that's, pretty good. We did end up probably paying about $100 worth of tolls going back and forth, the majority of those being in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and then Illinois, and a few in Kansas, so not too bad there. And then going out West Coast to East Coast, I stayed in those 3 KOAs. Those are about $60 to $70 a night, so it was about $200 in lodging. On the way back, I stayed in hotels. The first night, I believe it was $80, and then the next 2 nights were $100 each, so it was $280. So staying at the campsites, it was nice to get out in the tent and all that, but in reality, it doesn't really save you that much money over a hotel room. Depends on how you want to look at it. In my mind, you can drive a little bit longer using a hotel room because I don't have to get there and set up camp, and do all that stuff that's associated with camping. You just kind of roll in and then immediately go to bed or do whatever you want. And so I think that the cost savings for hotels, it's pretty pretty good. I mean, when you think about it, if you're spending an extra hour 3 times, that's 3 hours that you could be driving another 200 miles over the course of a road trip. So it really wasn't that much more expensive, maybe $100 to stay in the hotels. But I really enjoyed camping in the cyber tent. Just don't know that on a road trip that's probably the most efficient use of time. Now, some other things to talk about during the trip. We did have a couple issues with superchargers on the way out. We had that stall in Battle Mountain that wouldn't start or initiate a charge. On the way back, we did have that about 40-minute wait time at the Wendover supercharger. And then we also had that charging error in Wells, Nevada, where the cabinet or something turned off, and we ended up having to manually release the charging cable and then start a new session. We also found in Colorado and Limon, I found that charging pin on the handle was bent and not able to charge. And I feel like I'm forgetting one else, but for the most part, 90-95% of the time, supercharging is going to just be plug and play. Just plug in and start, and you don't have to worry about it. But there are those few times where you do have some issues, so you do want to keep an eye out on your charging. We did encounter a lot of derated V3 charging sessions, but that's because during the West Coast to East Coast leg, it was a heat wave. It was about 100 degrees or more for the majority of that trip, so we weren't seeing peak V3 rates. We also, during the trip in different places, had to utilize V2 charging. It's not ideal, it's not the fastest, but compared to taking this road trip 6 years ago when I did it, it's amazing to see how the charging network has expanded, because when I took the trip 6 years ago, it really was, you were charging at these towns because they were the only options, and it was only V2s back then. And now there's so many more options along these routes. 70 and 80 both had pretty plentiful charging. You could typically do anywhere from 100 to 150 miles in spurts, and then just ride the battery charge curve, on the lower end to make it quicker. And so I really am impressed by the supercharger build out. Like I said in the last video, when I left Delaware, there was one charger, 150 kilowatt charger in Delaware. And now within 20 minutes of my parents' house, there's 9 different chargers. There's V4s, there's V3s, still some of the V2s. But it's just amazing to see just how much the supercharging network has been expanded in just 6 short years. Now, I know a lot of people also want to hear about full self-driving. On the way out there, 2,800 miles, I'd wager I probably drove about 20 miles just because I was getting tired and wanted to drive myself. But other than that, the truck basically, other than pulling in and out of supercharging stalls, drove itself the whole entire time. On the way back, I did disengage FSD a couple times, specifically because I wanted to drive in the Rockies and I wanted to drive through some parts of Utah because they were fun driving roads. There were issues driving on the East Coast to West Coast leg with rain, where the speed limit was 70 and the truck detected bad weather, so it would only go 65 or 60. Now, in some cases that was true, it was raining pretty hard, but there were other cases where it was just kind of sprinkling, and that reduction in speed basically meant we couldn't go over the speed limit. So I ended up having to drive in some of Ohio, I want to say, and then later in the trip in Nevada at nighttime when FSD wouldn't do, the speed limit. Overall, FSD made the trip very easy. For the vast majority of the 80-something hours of driving, it was taking care of all of it. In perfect weather, sunny, no wind, FSD is awesome. Just kind of a little bit of comfort issues where sometimes it'll come up on like a truck and it changes lanes right away and gets around them. Sometimes it'll come up behind it and then slow down. And I found that you'd have to kind of goose the accelerator pedal just to get it back up to whatever your set speed limit was, and then that would initiate the turn, or the lane change. Also found, like I said in the videos, that like the steering wheel can be used to kind of nudge it to tell it what you want it to do. If it's really windy, and it's riding the lane line or rumble strips, which it did, occasionally, you could just kind of put some force on the wheel and bring it back into the center. Also found that when you're passing trucks or cars going slower and you're in the passing lane, if you kind of held the wheel to the right once you'd pass them, even if it was driving in the passing lane longer than I think it should have, it would initiate that lane change and move over. Now, I do kind of have an issue with its aggressiveness in terms of getting out of the passing lane after passing somebody, especially when you're doing like 80 or 85 miles an hour on the highway and you're passing these semis. It's very aggressive in terms of getting out of that passing lane and getting over, in front of that person. I had a couple times where like somebody immediately changed lanes right afterwards because I'm assuming they thought it was too close, for me to move over. So I do wish it would give us some more space when it did that, lane change maneuver. I also, like when you're going downhill, and it's kind of a quirk of Tesla's, is like on these long descents, like through the Rockies or through Lake Tahoe, there are these trucks and, those guys are, going slower, but at the same time on these huge descents, they're not going to ride their brakes and overheat their brakes. Now, Teslas and other EVs are great because like you can set a set speed and your regen just keeps you at that speed. You don't have to worry about your brakes getting hot or any of that. But when FSD does that, basically it gets over into that lane and keeps that set speed. And if it's aggressive and moving back into that lane and you have a truck that's, hauling while going down, I don't really want to be that close to it, because they're tending to go faster. And so sometimes I'd have to bump up the speed if we were doing a big descent just to kind of give them, room. Otherwise I would cancel the lane change and have the truck go further out before I got over. So not really safety issues per se, more comfort issues, things I wouldn't do otherwise. It does tend to get back out of the passing lane pretty aggressively and then 10 seconds later, change lanes back into the passing lane to pass somebody. Stuff where I probably would just keep going straight, but again, comfort issues and those probably will improve in the future, I would think. So overall, absolute blast of a trip. Like I said, I would totally recommend hitting the roads. If you can get a Tesla at some point that has free supercharging, it's an awesome perk. To not have to pay for the supercharging. Taking the trip and staying in hotels was roughly the same price that a round trip plane ticket would have been to go from, West Coast to East Coast and back. So money savings wise, especially with the free supercharging, it really didn't make that much of a difference, but I just really enjoy that driving and spending time on the road and seeing the country that way. So really enjoyed it. If you have any questions about the video or the road trip or anything else, let me know in the comments down below. Hopefully you've liked and subscribed, and let's do another road trip soon. Have a good one.